Good afternoon, everybody. This is Michael Earl, Professor at the Saïd Business School at Oxford University, and I'll be moderating this webinar on winning with IT in the 21st century. One of my roles here is to direct our CIO Academy, which we've been running for 14 years now, and in the last several CIO academies we've been examining what does digital mean, what does it mean for strategy, and in particular what does it mean for the CIO. In some ways the digital hype and the digital reality are another era where we see technology influencing business strategy as much as business strategy driving IT. And this is a situation where we need new models for strategy making, where we need to examine what might be the new organizational capabilities that are required and the organization design to go alongside that, and in some ways where we need to rethink leadership. And that's our agenda for the afternoon. The title is Winning with IT in the 21st Century. A subtitle could be Reimagining Organizations and Their Leadership for a Technology-Driven Age. We're going to look at this first of all with the help of Dave Aron. Dave Aron has been one of our foundation faculty on our CIO Academy since the beginning. He was for several years, for 12 years I think, an analyst at the well-known Gartner Group, a Gartner Fellow there, and a distinguished analyst, researching and speaking on strategy and leadership and IT management. But more important than that work has been his work in our core faculty, helping us evolve the program. Currently, he's with the Leading Edge Forum, the Global Director of Research there, and what Dave is going to talk about is based on some of that research and on his own experiences as he works with corporations around the world. So I'm going to hand over to Dave in just a few seconds. He will talk probably for about half an hour, but as we talk, we'd be grateful if those of you tuning in could be thinking of questions to ask, because we'll go into a question time after 30 minutes. And then we'll wrap up with some conclusion before 4 o'clock. So again, welcome very much to Oxford, welcome to our webinar, and I'm going to welcome Dave Aron, who I know is on the line already because I've spoken to him. Dave, over to you.
Oh, thank you, Michael. Good afternoon, and good afternoon to everyone on the webinar. Can I just check that you can hear me okay?
Sounds okay. Yeah, looks good.
Great stuff. So thanks again, Michael. As you know, we're working with you on the CIO Academy at Saïd Business School at Oxford University. One of my favourite times of year. It's absolutely fascinating. We normally have an amazing group of attendees. We have some great discussions. And I think particularly at the moment, because like innovations back on the agenda. I'm sure I don't need to persuade everyone on the webinar, because we hear about it every day, about all the exciting different digital innovations and indeed digital threats that are facing our businesses, our industries, our countries, etc. As Michael mentioned, I joined the Leading Edge Forum early last year, which is a part of the large IT services company CSC, soon to be called DXC, but that's another story. And we took a view, creating a research agenda that was trying to be helpful for IT business and digital leaders for the next few years. We took a view as to what we thought were really the biggest things going on, what was separating the winners and the losers in terms of surviving and thriving in a very digital age. And we ended up with quite a harsh conclusion. And the conclusion was, we have, as companies, as government agencies, as leaders, somewhat sleepwalked from the 20th century into the 21st century. We were suddenly surrounded with all this digital innovation, and we kind of of still have 20th century businesses and 20th century government agencies around us. So there was a real sense that we felt our businesses, our government agencies were not fit for purpose in the 21st century, where suddenly there's hyperconnectivity, where informational assets are often more valuable than physical assets, where businesses are more about change than they are about stasis. So we came to this fairly harsh conclusion that we needed to make very radical change to our businesses, to our way of doing strategy, to our talent pools, to our organization structures, etc. And in order to be helpful to our clients at Leading Edge Forum, we created an agenda that I'm hoping to share with you guys at CIO Academy around winning in the 21st century, what it looks like to be a 21st century organization. And I believe, Michael, there may be a slide that we could put up in front of everyone that I can talk about. Yeah, there it is. So I'd like to propose to everyone, there are precisely six ways that our businesses, our government agencies are not fit for purpose in the 21st century, and how we can go about improving it. The first one, which I hope you can see, is a yellow coloured piece in the bottom left of the slide that's being displayed. We would argue that most of our businesses are not very good at listening, sensing. Our businesses are very much focused on creating products and services, communicating them to the market, engaging with customers transactionally. But in terms of listening to new technology trends, new regulatory trends, new threats, cyber threats and digital business threats, digital anthropology, how people's attitudes to technology are changing, we're not very good at sensing. If I could parody it, I would say our organizations have small, underfunded R&D departments that are focused narrowly, often only on technology trends, and aren't very good or empowered at diffusing their learning in the organization. So the first thing we think we need to do better is get really good at listening, devote energy and time to it. And that doesn't mean running the occasional hack day. It means deeply embedding listening, learning, diffusing knowledge about new trends in the organization. One of our clients here at Leading Edge Forum is National Grid. They've become rather good at this. They've done lots of experiments interestingly using consumer-grade technology to solve business problems by plugging them together very quickly. So I think proactive haptic sensing, as we call it, is the first key capability that we need our leaders, our executives, our employees to be permanently engaged with and taken very seriously. The second piece is the purple one. As we go around this wheel on the slide, I hope you see. I hope you can see. Again, to exaggerate for effect, we would argue that in many companies, strategy has become an exercise in planning. So rather than truly setting an inspiring, exciting, differentiated direction, a statement of where we will play and how we'll win, why we'll win. In a lot of organizations, strategy is more like a planning exercise. Strategy as a Gantt chart, if you like. And really there are two big problems with that in this age of very fast change, in this age of talent wars, in this age of evolving digital capability. First of all, strategy as a plan is rather fragile. Gantt charts are not very naturally adaptive, whereas strategic directions are very naturally adaptive, and they survive the test of time, even when there's a lot of what we might call VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So that's the first problem with our strategy processes. Secondly, if our strategy looks like a Gantt chart, and again, I am exaggerating for effect, but if our strategy looks like a Gantt chart, is it going to inspire the latest digital talent to want to join our organization? to work with our organizations? Is it going to inspire our employees, our customers, our partners? So I think the second thing we really need to work hard on if we want to be fit for purpose for the 21st century is having really powerful digital narratives that tell a clear story of where we'll play, why we'll win, how we're different. Even our digital anti-strategy, where we deliberately won't play. These will be powerful in engaging all our stakeholders inside and outside the organization and helping us win even in times of lots of complexity and change. The third area where we believe most organizations are broken is the red piece at the top left of the slide. Many organizations suffer from what's commonly known as not invented here syndrome, where rather reluctant to use services from the cloud, all the different layers of the cloud, infrastructure as a service, software as a service, platform as a service, etc., etc. And this is very challenging because although there are sometimes good reasons to be circumspect about using, in fact, in leading edge form, we don't use the term cloud as much as the matrix, this very wide array of capabilities that are scalable, that are industrialized, that are ready to plug in. At one of our recent study tours in Silicon Valley, I was amazed at the range of these matrix services available, like facial recognition as a service, machine translation of natural languages as a service. And there's a real sense that we need to start thinking a bit more outside in our architecting of our business. So start with what can we use that's already there on the outside, rather than start with a reluctance to move away from what we've developed inside. Actually, also bundled in this red area is a willingness to look at non-traditional assets as some of the most important assets of our company. Traditionally, when we think of the assets of our company, we think of money, we think of property, we think of brand, etc. But we have to take information as an asset very seriously. The whole big data story, or at least the business end of the big data story. We have to take talent as an asset very seriously. It's our belief that talent wars will define the winners and losers in the next decade. And honestly, most of our HR organizations and our capabilities around talent aren't up to the job. Also, ecosystem as an asset. All the different companies, crowdsourcing spaces, individuals outside the organization that help us deliver, treating that properly as an asset and nurturing it is a key capability. And specific capabilities like what we might call David and Goliath partnerships. So big companies being able to work with small companies without them killing each other is a key asset and capability. So I think the third piece is this switching from an inside out to an outside in approach to assets and capabilities. Fourth is being willing, and this is the blue piece at the top of the slide, being willing to reimagine how our organization provides value to customers. And if you'll excuse a rather ugly metaphor, avoiding putting digital lipstick on the analog pig. Many organizations, when they think about the word digital at the moment, they're often thinking about digital marketing, using all the different digital channels, social channels, etc., to engage with the customer. But the underlying value proposition does not necessarily change. I think, in fact, I don't want to speak too strongly about it, since Oxford University is one of the finest education establishments in the world, but the whole education industry globally is having to ask itself some very deep questions about how education reinvents itself in a very digital world. Even as deep as, do people still want to commit multiple years to degree courses when learning could be much more continuous? Lots of deep questions. Insurance companies, rather than just thinking about multi-channel insurance models, considering, say, for example, groups of people that might want to insure together and share risk. The hyper-connected digital world throws up lots of possibilities of how our business might reimagine the products, the services, the value propositions, not just putting digital veneer on the existing value proposition. This is the fourth rather big question we have to ask ourselves. All of this is kind of in a flow. You know, we sense, we set our identity, we build the assets and capabilities, we turn those into products and services. But the next area, adaptive execution, says that's all well and good, but can we deliver on it? Can we turn on a dime? Can we, I guess one of the popular terms is pivot? Can we adapt quickly enough to all these decisions we need to make? Now, the whole area of adaptive, flexible, agile, etc. often makes one think of methodologies like Scrum and DevOps and Lean and Kanban, etc. Now, these are all well and good. They are a very important part of the story of being agile. And more clients that I work with have great stories about making breakthroughs through the use of agile methodologies. But as well as the process methodologies to be adaptive, we have to think about, have we got the culture to be adaptive? Culture that supports experimentation, a culture that supports collaboration across silos. I'm sure many people on the call have this experience. I often end up talking with chief information officers, chief digital officers, tools, classically like Microsoft SharePoint, and just implementing the tool does not have the effect of fostering collaboration. We have to address more how people work, who they trust, what they find convenient in terms of format for collaboration, etc. So building a truly collaborative culture is a key part of adaptive execution. Collaboration itself, a key part. We did some research recently entitled Who Shares Wins, and we noted that a slightly different approach to fostering collaboration and adaptation through the psychology of addiction, getting people addicted to new and more powerful and new effective behaviors through different rewards, different cues, etc. Borrowing from the psychology of addiction is very important. Another thing that makes us adaptive is having the information we need to make good decisions in near real time. So having all stakeholders having granular information, sufficiently granular information in a sufficiently timely fashion to be able to make good adaptive decisions. For example, to be able to kill experiments quickly, which is key. To be able to change products, services, pricing quickly. So that whole area of adaptive execution is the fifth area that we believe is critical, and frankly most companies are not fit for purpose. The sixth area is value and risk-centric leadership. What do we mean by that? So clearly every organization would claim to be focusing on value. But I think in reality, there's often a relatively limited set of operations and investments where it's easy to clearly measure value in a very tangible way. For example, a cost reduction project, or a project that's very specifically about generating new revenue. The challenge is, I mentioned this acronym before, a lot of VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. How do we make good value and risk-based decisions in that context? Do we suffer from the problem that people call HIPPO-based leadership, where HIPPO stands for highest paid person's opinion, where we kind of have the veneer of making decisions based on value and risk, but it's in fact often based on powerful people and relationships and charisma. Now, in reality, we know you can never completely get away from that. Businesses are human organizations. But if we can push, if we would argue that there's there's a lot of choice at the moment and a lot of change coming, and a lot of rather unfamiliar change. We better be good at choosing and changing and harvesting the value of all these different investments. That's why things like benefits realization, which, you know, in English slang we'd say is an old chestnut. It's like, it's a problem that's been around forever, making sure that our IT-intensive investments really deliver the expected value with behaviors like value challenge tools, benefits dependency networks, harvesting rules, etc. We better get better at those things if we want to thrive and survive. You know, a world of a lot of change and a lot of digital change, a lot of new forms of unexpected change and shocks and stresses. And perhaps most intriguingly, we're starting to work in Leading Edge Forum on a concept called anti-fragility in this area. You know, there's a real sense that our approach to risk management is broken. That risk management is very much about a kind of an engineering view of risk. We kill all forms of risk. Risk is bad. Versus a financial, commercial view of risk, which is we choose to take risks where we think there's a supernormal potential return. There's a reason to take that risk, we might benefit from. And we try and create optionality, options, so that we can jump on positive risks, if you like. So changing from classic risk management to anti-fragility is a rather intriguing topic. It's inspired by a book by Nicholas Taleb called Anti-Fragility. And currently in LEF, we're trying to work out what that means for CIOs, chief digital officers, businesses and government organizations. This is something we'll be discussing at CIO Academy. And if you've stayed with me around this whole circle, 6 things that are broken in our, quote, 20th century business models, and 6 things we have to fix to survive and thrive in the rest of the 20th century, where we get to is the centerpiece of this circle, which is instead of our products and processes being kind of the center of what we do. And I'd sort of argue, even companies that claim to be customer-centric, they're really centric in how customers or citizens interact with our products, our services, our processes. If we can make a true leap to be centered on the customer really, so our part in the customer's processes, the customer's life, the citizen's life. This is, I think, what a true 21st century organization can do. Break away from a self-center, a product, service, process center, and be truly centered on the customer and different potential interaction points with that customer. I mean, just to give you an example, if one was a train operator, a classic way of thinking about how a train operator might respond in a digital world might be very good web capabilities and mobile capabilities to buy tickets, to present paperless tickets, Wi-Fi on the train, etc. Whereas if we think more generally, what are the reasons people take journeys? For example, if they're on a business trip, would they like slides to be printed out waiting for them at the other end, etc. It's rather a trite example, but it's a shift from thinking about a customer's interaction with our products and processes as they are now, to reimagining the value that we can provide for customers, for citizens, in an increasingly digital, hyper-connected world. So this is the vision of winning in the 21st century. I'd like to share with you at CIO Academy, be running a little survey with you, getting you to discuss with the whole group and with each other about where you see your pain points. This model breaks down to a much more detailed kind of maturity model. We'll be discussing that to see where you feel the pain and where you feel you can improve. So I hope that's a useful, helpful overview of the model and what we'll be sharing in the CIO Academy. I wonder, could I hand back to you, Michael, to see if there are any questions or comments?
Yes, thank you very much, Dave. So if we can encourage our listeners to send in questions, that would be really helpful. Maybe I could just start with one as the questions come in. Dave, you talked in early on about services and ideas such as facial recognition as a service and natural language as a service. In other words, the outside-in approach to assets and capabilities. If we think about the IT activity and the IT function, one term that I've come across recently is the notion of CIO as a service. I don't know whether you've come across that, but if you have anything to say on it, and if you haven't, does it really suggest there's a new way of thinking about the role of the CIO?
Well, actually, Michael, I haven't come across that term. It's rather intriguing. You've set my mental motors whirring. But I think that there is a really interesting point. Maybe not just the CIO, but the IT organization. We're currently trying to look at how do we change from a classic IT organization versus what you need at the core to be the digital engine of a company going forward. That, as I'm sure everyone on the call has experienced, there are lots of questions. Do we need a chief digital officer as well as a CIO? Do we need a chief data officer? I know this is something you're rather expert in too, Mike. And what kind of capabilities do we need? Where do we draw the line between IT and the rest of the business in terms of turning raw data into insights and actions? Where do we draw the line, intriguingly, between IT and what one used to call OT, operational technologies, like the technologies in factory equipment, the technologies in telecom networks, power stations, etc. Even these days in wearable devices, in basic devices, in humans. There's an issue about IT versus OT versus IoT, Internet of Things. Then there's the question of, do we need different, with these what we might call digerati, the kind of huge digital cloud companies, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Facebook, Alibaba, etc., etc. Do we need different kinds of relationships? I thought it was very intriguing. It was announced maybe 2 weeks ago, I think, that Denmark, the country of Denmark, now has an ambassador to the digerati. They actually have someone with ambassadorial status who is the ambassador to these absolutely huge, very innovative digital companies that have more and more of an effect on our lives. So I think, although I'm not familiar with this term CIO as a service, I think there is a real sense that companies need to be very thoughtful. And in fact, it may well be that companies don't need the same thing as each other anymore. When IT is just a peripheral thing, we might all have a CIO, infrastructure, operations, development, architecture. But in a world where some companies, robotics and automation is very important, some companies, big data and monetizing data, some companies moving to platform business models, suddenly we don't necessarily need the same kind of fix at every company. And we think we'll see much more variety, both in the leadership roles and the emphasis of talent in our organizations.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that, Dave. We've had a question come in which might help us focus as well, which is, are there any organisations that you've come across or know of who are doing these things, or most of these things, particularly well? Or is this sort of aspirational?
Yeah, it's a great question. In my opinion, that I haven't come across any organisation that's doing all of them well. But for each of the different capabilities, and there's much more detail underneath this model, we do see companies who are doing well and applying extraordinary, unusual practices that most others aren't for success. So to give you a concrete example, one of the aspects of outside in, which I mentioned earlier, which is the red piece of this model, is getting much better at unleashing talent. we're deliberately avoiding words like HR because that's more about an organization. About how do you find, attract, motivate, unleash the exciting talent to bring your businesses forward. So there are many companies applying unusual practices to get over some of the issues here. Just for example, Chinese companies, Huawei and Haier, are doing some very interesting things, including in some areas, managers losing rights to their staff. So staff get to choose which manager they work for and which project they work on. Sounds kind of scary, but you actually get incredibly motivated staff and a whole different dynamic where managers, it's very much about being seen as an exciting, popular manager to work for, rather than a manager who can, if I could put it simply, lord it over their staff. So that would be an example. Lift outs. Some organizations are lifting out whole teams rather than hiring individuals. There's a very interesting payments company called Stripe, and if you look at their website, they say they're not hiring atoms, they're hiring molecules. So rather than hiring individuals, they're hiring teams who already know how to work together and like working together. Now, all of these, there are more of these, but all of these breakthrough practices come with risks and caveats, etc. There's no silver bullet. But I would say there are companies being really brave. And it's not just small digital startups. There are 100-year-old companies, multi-100-year-old companies in heavy industries who are recognizing these issues and taking steps. I'm not aware of any super company that's doing everything, and certainly not in a way that's applicable to everyone else. But within each area, we are finding, because I think the questioner is correct, it's no good just coming up with ideas where we haven't got concrete examples. There are concrete examples in every area, but no one doing everything.
One of the related questions that comes to my mind is this. All of us tuned into this webinar can probably identify with these 6, 7 sets of ideas, particularly if we come from an IT background, because we can conceive of them if we want to be more, as it were, digitally led and driven. But most of these require an approach or a vision or a determination or a direction at the total organisational level, don't they? Or do they? I mean, is this something where a CIO or the IT function can start to prod and poke and take a lead, or is it very much a function of where the total organisation is headed?
Yeah, it's a great point, Michael. I think clearly this model is about the whole business or the whole government agency. It's not a model for the IT organisation, certainly not the whole IT organisation alone. So get on with that. There are two real responses here. One is probably the most powerful thing a CIO can do, and I apologise if this sounds trite, but it's true. The most powerful thing a CIO can do is help to work on what one might call the digital savvy of all the leaders in the business, in the whole organisation, the board, the executive, middle-level managers. So we need to work on the digital savvy of the business so that everyone's brain is engaged, everyone's heart and mind is on this. And I think sometimes that's very contextual. I gave a presentation to the senior executive of a very large engineering company yesterday, and we received instructions. They weren't quite like this, but if I could parody them, they said, if anybody mentions Uber or Airbnb, they will be thrown out of the room. It has to be very contextual how we approach this so that people see the relevance for their organisation, for their bits of the business, for their industry. So I think number one answer, Michael, is it's definitely not just about IT, but there is a real opportunity to work on the digital savvy, the digital appetite of senior leadership. Number two answer is we can model great behaviors in the IT organization. So, for example, plenty of companies I hear of who have cracked the nut of agile methodologies. Often the rest of the business get excited and implement those agile methodologies in their part of the business. You know, think all the exciting things about agile, like daily stand-ups, weekly client meetings, backlogs, fixed deadlines and variable functionality rather than overruns. We can display these behaviors and let the rest of the business observe and try. And I think, you know, more generally, this is a question, Michael, that you and I know has come up over the years. It's very extreme to say, but if everything goes to the cloud, if infrastructure, you know, is run outside, what does the CIO do in the future? And being more of the digital leader of the whole business might be a very viable direction of travel for the CIO role.
Yes, very interesting. We've had a question. We might come back to that, Dave. But we've had a rather sort of down-to-earth, practical, almost critical question in the best sense of the world, which is, if I might paraphrase, might go something like this. Well, this is all very well, but do companies, do organisations, does the world at large recognise that there's still quite a lot of risks and exposures in IT? Systems fail, we have IT employee burnout, we have CIO stress. Is this a whole new can of worms on top of something which is struggling anyway? Or do we have to sort of somehow get out of that slightly historical perspective?
So, Michael, is your interpretation of that question that this appears like we're asking the CIO and IT organisation to do more? Well, and in fact, they're already very busy. Is that the line of question?
That's how I've interpreted it, but the person who asked the question might like to just come in and say, well, what I really am concerned about is, but I think there's twofold. What in this question, one is, you know, is it all a glorious future, or is it more difficult and more risky than it seems, if you like? And the other hand, the one we just mentioned, is there already so much being demanded of IT and the CIO that this in some ways could be the straw that breaks the camel's back.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would say, you know, nothing is easy. But I think the message here is not that we all have to do more. It's more that we have to do different. So, you know, we have to look aggressively, I would say, at the cloud. You know, there are situations where public cloud doesn't make things any easier, it makes things harder, even situations where it's more expensive. But there are also many situations where things that we might argue are commodity aspects of our business can benefit a lot from moving to the cloud. We can do, you know, we have to do less traditional IT mechanic type work, if you like. And I think even though we can't do that tomorrow necessarily, there is a need to transition to this broader digital focus rather than building lots of IT stuff and maintaining lots of IT stuff internally. So I think the message is definitely not to do more. Mm-hmm. The message is to do different and just shift the focus very slightly. For example, not overly focus on IT enabling business processes, but also think about IT in products. Yes. It's rather challenging, and I think we'll need some different talent pools to do that. But it will probably be even more challenging if we don't do that and our competitors eat our lunch.
Yes. I mean, one of the interesting, this is a comment which is not rather than a question, but you might like to enlarge on it. One of the interesting things we see coming out of the CIO Academy for the last 3 or 4 years, I should say, is when we talk about cloud, there's still quite a bit of hesitation around. CIOs will say, well, we quite like a bit of cloud here and a bit there, or we like private cloud, or we like shared cloud, but we're not sure about public cloud. That's on the one hand. And then, as you know, when we do an exercise on trying to be inventive and innovative and thinking of new products which are digitally enabled and thinking about the information they generate, then CIOs get incredibly creative. So if you think about a sort of nervousness about the inherited IT world, but then you think about that creative potential, does that suggest in some way the need to divide up the responsibilities and the role of the CIO, as well as the CIO thinking more of being the digital leader?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and we've experienced this many times in many flavours. I think one of the I think the 1970s, some academics started talking about ambidextrous organisations. When I was at Gartner, I coined the term bimodal business and bimodal idea. Here at Leading Edge Forum, we talk about actually a tripartite structure of pioneers, settlers, and town planners. But I think there is a recognition that if you're in a time of change, you probably don't do everything one way with the same people, with the same processes. There's predictable work and there's exploratory work. We need to do both. And we need to, in terms of the pioneers, settlers, and town planners, we need to have the connected tissue to make sure that the things that the pioneers discover are properly industrialized by the settlers before they are managed by the town planners. And we have to make sure we have the right people in the right jobs. It doesn't feel like an us and them culture. We're all somehow working for the same organization, for the same goals. And there are exciting career paths in all those areas. So I think that notion, whether you call it ambidextrous organization, bimodal, or pioneer, settlers, town planners, I would strongly resist the term two-speed IT or two-speed business. So I don't think it's really about speed. It's about predictable work and exploratory work and being able to industrialize exploratory work when it's clear that it adds value.
Yeah, I mean, the business strategists, or at least in the business school world, and economists, when we talk about innovation, we make the distinction between exploitation and exploration. So, exploitation is getting the most out of your current assets and your current business model, and obviously exploration is about experimentation and inquiry and curiosity, and maybe in particular seeing what value you can discern from information. So that all hangs together rather well, I think, those two differences.
Yeah, nice. I think that's a much more eloquent way of saying what I was trying to say.
I'm encouraging still our audience to come up with questions. Is anybody bursting with a question out there? You talked, Dave, at one point about strategy becoming more of a sort of wider stakeholder exercise. Do you think there's any particular stakeholders that we should include, which we historically have excluded?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fascinating topic, I think, Michael. There's a couple of things there. One is, I think, and we have a kind of survey and a maturity model behind what I presented today, Delia. Plenty of companies bring customers in, whether that's B2B customers, B2C customers, sitters, etc. Plenty bring customers in and do focus groups around product strategy. But I think there is an opportunity, even when customers are involved in quite low value transactions, and you have lots of customers, to bring customers in to talk about identity and corporate strategy, rather than just kind of testing new products and pricing plans. I think that's one stakeholder group we could involve more in business strategy as opposed to just product strategy.
Mm-hmm.
The second one, I think, is regulators. Everyone's doing kind of the dark side, the sort of risk regulation, etc. I think we have to accept that risk is not just about, having a risk register and ticking off that we've met all the requirements, but we have to connect the story of risk and value in our business. So, for example, it might be that we could go into a quite risky area because, in fact, we are better off than our competitors, even though it's a risk. So I think, if you like, inviting the dark side, sort of the auditors, the regulators, the risks, getting them much more closely and much more early involved in some of the changes we're talking about. Some of the changes, as you know, are very big, like potentially sharing information with competitors in near real time, a sort of pre-competitive information commons, and lots of questions and challenges about that, and bringing the dark side in to make sure it's possible, I think is very helpful.
David, one thing that's just been pointed out, if we can go back to your diagram of the 7 imperatives, as it were, is there anything more you might add about the blue segment, the 360-degree digitally optimised portfolio?
Yes, certainly. I think so. If I could just review, the basic idea is that for many organisations, when they hear the word digital, it's kind of e-commerce warmed over. It's like, have we got an app for that? Can we sell it? Have we got online? Have we got social presence? If it's appropriate, can we do it without paper? Paperless ticketing, all that sort of thing. And our feeling is that's a very shallow approach to thinking about how the digital world affects our products and services. Instead, what we can think about, for example, in the education world, I used that example earlier, flipped education. So all the combination of technologies, tools, informational resources, chat resources can mean, for example, a lot of learning happens in the home environment and homework happens in the school environment. That would be an example of kind of deeply rethinking how the hyper-connected digital world allows better outcomes, more powerful value propositions in an industry. I like the example very much of Friendsurance. Friendsurance is a startup based in Berlin in the insurance industry. They had a notion that perhaps in this world where we're much more connected to groups of friends online, etc., we could consider an insurance model where groups of friends insure together and they self-insure small insurance claims, like if their windows break and it costs €200, and they self-insure that as a group. For bigger insurance claims, they go back to conventional insurers. And these are examples of relatively deeply rethinking how we show up for our customers, what value we provide, and even what we might call digital extensions. Classically, when businesses think of extending, they think of either product line extensions, we make shoes, we'll make socks as well, or brand extensions. We stand for trust, so we'll do other trusted things. We can also think of digital extensions. If we have information that no one else has about our customers, about our industry, etc., we could extend to areas that are nothing to do with either our product line or our brand. I mean, it's a very old example now, but the example of Amazon going from being an online bookseller to being an online everything seller to now being a cloud services provider. That's a complete example of digital extensions, recognizing their capabilities. I did see lots of social media at the time that Amazon first announced it was going to be a cloud provider, AWS, to the effect of what business does an online bookshop have getting into that IT industry. But I think we can see now it was quite a sensible digital extension, rather well executed. So it's really about that, being prepared to rethink the business model, the value proposition, products and services, and classically being prepared to cannibalize our own products, our own revenue streams, before somebody else does.
Thank you very much, Dave. As we draw to a conclusion, as we've been talking, I've written down 5 sort of high-level ideas, which are not meant to be exclusive, but in a way maybe strap lines to take away. I think what Dave has been emphasising is we're very much moving into a world where strategy making and indeed execution is a much more open activity, where sharing is the norm, where you can collaborate and compete, to use an old phrase. But at the same time, maybe the IT function can be thinking of itself as the sort of digital core or hub of thinking and practicing in organisations. And that isn't necessarily, as Dave has just said, doing more and more. It's about being different and thinking about how different do we have to be. And it strikes me that these 7 imperatives for winning in the 21st century can be translated into reorientations, to use another word, reorientations for the IT function. And another thought of Dave's was in this sort of dilemma of who leads on all this. Is it somehow the whole organisation? You could never quite conceptualise the whole organisation, or is it the IT function, or is it a strategy group, or what is it? Well, one thought came out is of thinking of the IT function behaving as a digital role model, and they could be a sort of exemplar and a development agent for the rest of the organisation. And then we've just been talking about products and processes and information and what business are we in. And there was the thought of digital extension. How can we extend our product range, our brand, our services, and indeed maybe change the business we're in through digital extension? And Amazon was providing the perfect example. Now, these are some of the big questions that we open with on the first day of our CIO Academy, for those who are interested, and we very quickly move into thinking about how to innovate and develop digital products and how to make the most of information as a competitive resource. We then go into the critical questions which never go away, which is, what does IT leadership look like? What are the critical success factors for a CIO who not only survives but thrives, to use the phrase earlier this afternoon? And then we think very aggressively about what would be different when we get back to the desk the following Monday, and how do we embrace some of these new ideas and, in a word really, perhaps accommodate exploration as well as exploitation. And that's what our academy is about. If you're interested, I think you'll be seeing a flyer on the screen at the moment. The next CIO Academy is in May of this year. We attract people from all sectors and from all countries, and if some of you are able to come, I know Dave and I look forward to meeting up with you and discussing some of these ideas in more detail. If you require more information about the CIO Academy, you'll see the contact point there. And in the meantime, we thank you very much for joining us and wish you all the best in winning in the 21st century. Thank you very much. Good afternoon.